Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. Unless you're new here, welcome for the first time. This is a different entry. I haven't really done a duo with somebody in quite a while. But anyways, I'm here with Brandy from Terrorific Lady, so I'll go ahead and let her go ahead and introduce herself.
Yeah, hey, I am Brandy, and otherwise known as the Terrorific Lady. And I like to talk about, I run a little thing called Retro Horror School, where I talk about a lot of horror concepts from the 1970s through the 2010s. I review a lot of movies from those eras as well. I do some franchise rankings, I do some tier rankings, and yeah, if it's anything horror from those eras, I talk about it, I teach it, and yeah, I just have fun with it.
Cool stuff.
Yeah.
So we decided, to do a couple videos together, and one of them wanted to do is for this one, because there are cases, I think everybody's been in this situation, where they see a movie and they just don't enjoy it, or maybe they saw it and they enjoyed it. And then the opinion of that changes down the line. Usually for me, the ones that stick out are the ones that I just initially didn't really care for, couldn't really get into, thought they were boring, whatever. And then years later, I decide to give it another try, and then I end up really enjoying it. So I do have some videos on my channel that I just call like Second Chance Cinema, those ones that I revisited and enjoyed. So we figured this would be a good topic to start with here. So Brandy, is there a movie that when you first saw it, you just didn't enjoy it, didn't get why people liked it, and then changed your opinion about it later on?
Yes, actually, my movie would have to be American Psycho. It came out in 2000, and that was around the time that I was depending on whether it came out, I was either just finishing up my junior year in high school or starting my senior year. I can't remember exactly when it came out, but yeah, I saw it and I was just like, what the heck is this? This guy is a total jerk. Like, why is anybody even making a movie about this kind of guy? And why would people watch it? It just it angered me so much to where I was just like, I was telling my mom, that movie sucks and I'm never watching it again. And I had not watched it since I was a teenager up until a few months ago. I was like, you know what? I saw it on Peacock. I was like, you know what? It's been forever and a day since I've seen this. I'm going to watch this and see if my mind has changed any. And so I watched it. I was like, oh my God, this is actually a brilliant psychological horror movie, like a critique also on that hustle bro culture of especially just of the 80s, and just how he's an unreliable narrator and you're questioning his every single thing that he says, his every single action. It's just he's not actually chasing after Paul with a chainsaw. It's I don't think he's gonna be actually killing animals. Is he even actually saying the things that he was saying? And also the business card scene sticks out a lot in my mind, where they're arguing just about the different types of business cards. This font, look at that font. So after revisiting it, this is brilliant. It's a brilliant satire. I also love the fact that it Mary Herron directed it, so you've got a woman's point of view, a woman behind the lens and directing this type of movie. And then also, this is the movie that catapulted Christian Bale's career. He was told that this would be career suicide. If he ever did a film like this, it's gonna be career suicide. No one's ever gonna want to cast you in anything, and well, you proved them all wrong.
Yeah, I remember first seeing this one. I think I'd only seen it the one time, but I've seen a lot of clips from it, where there were some aspects of it that I just didn't quite get, especially once we get to that ending, as far as what's in his imagination and what's not. But I've always planned to kind of go in and rewatch it again one day. But one interesting thing was the writer had also written Rules of Attraction, which I remember really enjoying that film. And I guess this Bateman character, I guess that character's younger brother is the one in Rules of Attraction, played by James Van Der Beek, I think. So it's kind of this weird little connection. And I remember trying to read the book just to get more insights, but it just wasn't my kind of writing style. But I always found it interesting, like to see what this author's kind of put together and how they try to bring that to the screen. This is one that I have always wanted to rewatch, but I remember those same feelings, like especially the business card scene, because I used to do IT at like a financial company, and I've seen people like that, or people who think they are like that, and I just couldn't stand seeing it in this. But it really is creepy because it's like the movie just kind of won't die. So it's one of those ones, like if I see something and I don't like it or just think it's okay, but it doesn't seem to die and people are still talking about it, I know I'll go in for a second viewing to check it out. Now, I think I saw the sequel at one point, but I don't remember anything about it. But yeah, and for me, I mean, there are a few that I've seen at the first time. I mean, I'll choose one that the first time I actually turned it off after 15 or 20 minutes. And I think a lot of people have done this and refuse to even try to watch it again or to watch it in the first place. And that's for the Rob Zombie version of The Munsters. So this was quite an interesting film. You know, it definitely seemed to divide fans. So I tried watching it. This was in October of 2022. And I made it about 15 minutes in, and I just couldn't get into it, and I turned it off. And I figured, I grew up more with the Addams Family than the Munsters. Maybe I just don't care, I just couldn't get into it. And then the next weekend, I was at a horror convention, and I'd met Daniel Roebuck, who plays, the Count in this. And he was just such a nice guy. I mean, he was really charming, really sweet, and he mentioned stuff about the Munsters. We were just talking about other movies he was in, and I just walked away from that conversation feeling, just because he was so nice, I have to give this one another try. Going into it, knowing what to expect. It's this weird, super colorful, vibrant parody that's going to be more in line with an audience from something like Hocus Pocus than people who grew up with the Munsters. Now, I still think it's a little odd because it being in color and being so cartoonish pulls away from what I had seen in reruns, which was all black and white. I always felt that The Munsters was leaning a little bit more towards comedy than Addams Family did. But for some reason, when I sat down to watch it again, just with an open mind saying it's going to be silly, it's not going to be even creepy, it's just going to be silly, spooky, Hocus Pocus style fun, I ended up actually enjoying it. Now, it's got like a 4.5 on IMDb, and I can't argue with that. There are 4.5 movies that I enjoy, and I can understand people really not liking it. But it's one I was the most surprised with. And then a few months later, it was about 6 or 8 months later, I got to meet Jeff Daniel Phillips, who, was in it as Herman. And again, it was just like, it kind of made me like the movie better when you got to meet the people who made it, and really say, let me give this one a chance. And I actually ended up enjoying it. I was really surprised that I did.
I can't really say much about The Munsters because it's not one that I have seen. The last Rob Zombie film I saw was, I want to say Halloween 2? Yeah. Yeah. So.
Yeah, he's got some interesting ones, and that's where some opinions of mine had changed. I'd watched his remake of Halloween, and I remember really enjoying it when I first saw it. And then when I went through all of the Halloween films, because I'd only seen part 1, the Rob Zombie one, and by that point 2 of the more recent sequels. And I think I'd seen Halloween Age 20 at some point. So I was never really a big Halloween fan, and I'd only really seen that first Halloween movie maybe 15 years ago. I just, for some reason, never gotten around to it. So when I decided to visit the whole franchise for my channel and went through the 2 remakes, the Rob Zombie films, this time I just didn't really enjoy his, first one as much. I felt they were a little bit too long. It kind of took it in a direction of, instead of having Michael Myers just be evil, just pure evil that you can't get away from, you can't reason with. They wanted to put more reason behind it, which makes sense, to learn more about them. And I think maybe if I hadn't just watched all the other stuff leading up to that remake, I would have enjoyed it more. So I think with some of these, when you rewatch them, it just depends on maybe the first time you watched it, you weren't in the right frame of mind, you had different expectations, or weren't as familiar with some of the material. And when you come back, it's a bit better.
Yeah, like I could think of I can think of a movie also on the opposite end of the spectrum where I watched it first and I really liked it, and then when I revisited it again, it's like, well, this is just okay. It is Scream from 1996.
Right.
That movie was pretty much my entire life from like the year that I had like the VHS tape. I wore that tape out. I had to end up getting another one, and then it got lost in the move, and then I hadn't revisited it since then until again just about a few months ago with American Psycho. It's like, well, I remember really enjoying this one, let me see if I still do, and I didn't get the same level of enjoyment from Scream. It's not a terrible movie, and I really love the meta slasher direction that Wes Craven went with this one. He did a lot better job with that, the meta direction, than he did in Wes Craven's New Nightmare. I didn't really care for that one, but this one he did it better. And I felt that some things, though, in Scream were a little bit too telegraphed. Just like the fact that you could definitely tell Billy was going to at least be one of the killers because of his behavior throughout the entire movie. They made him seem too jerky. Right. And whereas with Stu, he's seen more of just like the weird kind of comedic, goofy sidekick. So it would still be a little bit shocking to discover, he's also a killer too. Like, what the heck?
Yeah, like we needed to have something else thrown our way. Like maybe have Randy do some creepy words to make you say maybe the movie freak is the one doing it, you know?
Yeah, and they did kind of try and go with that in the video store, but again, it was Billy that was saying like, hey, like maybe you're like a suspect. I buy it coming from the guy that's pretty much it's being telegraphed that he's the killer. But yeah, it's like, while I still think it's a good, solid film, the opening for that still really sticks out in my mind. I think it's just one of the most solid 5-minute scary slasher openings I have ever seen. Yeah. It's just good to me. It's not like I don't have the same level of enjoyment of it as I did when I was a teen.
Yeah, like when I revisited that franchise, I still really enjoy the first one, but it sits differently because it's been like 25 years and there's been so much that's either mimicked it or just downright did a parody of it, that it's hard for me to separate the film from those parodies, because you're seeing the source of all those parodies. And at the time it was groundbreaking. We hadn't really seen as much like that. It was bringing back slasher films, and then we had all these other ones inspired, like I Know What You Did Last Summer and Urban Legend, and all these other ones were coming out, plus all the straight to video stuff. But so now when I watch that one, I feel like there's a little bit more of that parody comparison. I don't know if it would still be my favorite of the group of all of them, because some of the newer ones I've enjoyed because they're updated and they're pulling a little bit further away from the source. I know that, there are some entries that I didn't really care for, but and it's weird how sometimes nostalgia, you think back on something and you loved it so much, but then you've seen it so much and it's been parodied and it's inspired so many things since that you go back in and it's like, yeah, it's okay. It's like in 97 when they re-released the Star Wars films, we're in the theater and people were laughing during A New Hope because some of the acting really is bad. And some of the dialogue really is bad, but our nostalgia was hanging on to it so much that once we were in the theater with the whole audience, we realized, every movie has issues. And sometimes when it's been a while, you start to realize those. So I could definitely see Scream being one of those that it's like, once we've gotten over its initial impact and introduction, it's kind of just a good movie, but not amazing,
Yeah, sometimes with nostalgia, you just take off those rose-colored glasses and you could see something for what it really is. And then sometimes you refuse to take off the rose-colored glasses and be like, I know it's bad or whatever, but I still like it. And some films like that, but with Scream, it was just more of a, that's fine.
Yeah, just kind of fine. Like, I had another one that went into like the positive direction that I was really surprised with, which was Nightbreed. So, I loved Nightbreed, saw it in the theater, had it on VHS, Laserdisc, DVD, Blu-ray, all that kind of stuff. And then by the time I got it on Blu-ray, had the director's cut. And originally I just didn't really care for the director's cut because I just knew the original version so well that watching the director's cut felt like I was seeing this edit of it that, I wasn't as familiar with. So I felt like I was missing certain beats. Had certain expectations of how it was laid out and it just wasn't working. It was almost like seeing something edited for television. Like it's not what you're familiar with. And then at some point, I think it had been like a couple of years since I'd watched it, I decided to just sit down and watch the director's cut again and see what's so different about it. And this time through it, trying to kind of ignore what I felt about the original that I grew up with, I ended up really enjoying it. And it feels like the director's cut has a much more linear storytelling. One of the things that I realized about the original was there's a lot of like going to Midian, coming back, going here, coming back to Midian, coming back. And it's like all this back and forth that felt like the story wasn't moving forward that well. Some of the reveals didn't seem to happen in the right direction, where this one seemed like Clive Barker was really setting this story on a better pace to go along it, even if after watching the original, there's entire scenes that they didn't have originally. It really came together much better on that. Once I kind of wiped my nostalgia from my mind of the original one.
Yeah, Nightbreed is one of the few Clive Barker films I have not seen, so I'm gonna have to put that on my list. But going off in the direction to the more positive, where I first saw a film was kind of and then I liked it a lot more, I would have to say Alien, Ridley Scott's Alien, 1979. I first saw it, I was just like, this is so goddamn boring.
Yeah.
Like, this is so slow paced. It's like, what the heck? Like, where's, like, I think I was more just focused on just like, where's the creature? Where's the alien? And it's that I wasn't really appreciating the setting. And so I was like, I got through it. I was so bored with it. And I was just like, I am never going to watch this again. But then a few years down the line, it's like, you know what? I'm going to watch it again. Like, I just want to see, like, if my mind has changed. And it definitely has. Now that at the time, like, now I knew that it was based on the captain's logs from Dracula, which is one of my favorite parts of that book. And it's basically Dracula in space. So once I kind of knew that, I was like, ooh, okay, I'm intrigued. So coming, I guess from that standpoint, it made me appreciate things a lot more. The creature lurking in the shadows, you not knowing where the creature may be. It's just like, this creature was once like really like tiny, and now it's like freaking huge. It like grew like in about an hour. And just the paranoia, the isolation, all the and just pretty much also, you not only had the alien as an evil entity, you also had Ash from Wayland Corporation, who they didn't know was an android. And but so you had all this stuff going on that just made this movie so great for me. Like, I love it now.
I think when I was younger, I'd seen the sequel Aliens first, because it like came on cable, and then it was like tracking down the original. And so I had that same kind of thought that by comparison, it's really boring, because you're going into it, like I was going into it with the thoughts of Aliens, of being more action related. And then it's like, I don't know if I just had like get older and kind of be ready for it, or kind of understand where they're coming from, that it is more like, something like The Thing or like Jaws, where it's going to be very sparingly. They're going to build up a lot of tense atmosphere before they do any of those reveals. Yeah. And as far as like that idea of it kind of being based on like captain's logs from Dracula, that reminds me of the newer film of Last Voyage of the Demeter, which is all about that, doing a similar thing where, and they're using practical, they're using CG, they're using these slow moments of building this tense, dramatic effect. And it works well, even in this enclosed environment, as far as what we as the audience are seeing. And, but yeah, I mean, it definitely seems to follow a different kind of format, that if you go in expecting something bigger and more exciting and more slasher, like, it's going to seem like the most boring movie.
Yeah, I think that's part of also why I was kind of got this story, because I think I saw Aliens first before I saw Alien, and so I was expecting something completely different. It's like, well, James Cameron's is a very much action-based sci-fi horror movie, like Marines and people shooting guns and just like going after the aliens. Whereas with Scott's, just completely different tone, and it's just like, maybe if I saw the first one first, I may have had different thoughts, but that's not the way it panned out.
Yeah, and last night I did try revisiting a film that I originally didn't make it through. Just for, I think it's from '81, the film Shock Treatment, which is kind of like a loose sequel with some of the characters in a way to Rocky Horror Picture Show. So right now it's up on YouTube in HD. It's been up there for years. Somehow there's no copyright strike on it. And I'd had it in my watch later list for years because I wanted to sit down, pay attention, and try to enjoy it. I think the first time I watched it, I'd already like opened up a bottle of wine and got through Rocky Horror Picture Show. And then by the time I got to this one, I was just probably a little bit inebriated. So I was like, all right, well, not drinking anything. Let me just sit down and watch this thing. But still, I made it about 35 minutes in and I just couldn't get hooked into the movie. Like, I'm giving it that second chance, thinking this will be a good one that if I enjoy it, I can make a video for my channel about how I went in with a different frame of mind, and it was great. Instead, I went in with a different frame of mind and felt about the same. I was even like reading a Wikipedia article about the story of the movie just to try to keep me interested in what's happening in the movie because something wasn't coming along. And I know it wasn't critically received well. The fans didn't receive it well of Rocky Horror Picture Show. But that over time, it did develop a fan base. But I don't really hear much about the movie. And I think that's kind of a reason why. You know, people wanted one thing out of Rocky Horror. Same thing with me. And then when I went into this, I wanted that similar style. And whatever they were trying to do didn't really come across to me. So I don't always end up liking them better the second time. This one, I liked it exactly the same in that I didn't finish it. Someday I will. It's still sitting there in my queue, having 35 minutes of it watched. So one day I will try to finish that one up.
I can't really think of a horror movie like offhand where it's just like, oh, I thought it was bad and I turned it off. Because usually my mindset going into horror movies, like however I feel about them, even if I halfway through I realize they I feel like they maybe stink just a little bit in my opinion. I'm just like, I'm gonna finish this. Like, I'm not shutting this off. I've already made it like this far. I'm gonna be finishing it. So I don't have that many movies that I could say like, well, I shut it off, but then went back to it and gave a second chance through. It's like, I usually just watch them all through in one shot. So no examples like that, like immediately.
Yeah, I used to always force myself to finish everything back when I'd be renting them on VHS because you paid money specifically for the title. I'm gonna watch it, you know, even if I end up hating it at the end of it. But now it's like it's too easy to just, you know, select something else to watch. You know, there's too much to choose from. Sometimes it's hard to get through that first 15 minutes for me. So for instance, when I gave up on Shock Treatment, I put on TerrorVision because I'd only seen it on YouTube in like 360p, really bad quality, and I'd had the Blu-ray of it. And so I wanted to wait a little while before rewatching it. So I was like, you know what? I remember thinking this was pretty funny, really weird and silly. I'm going to put this Blu-ray on now that I have it. So it's more vibrant, and I kind of enjoyed watching that. You know, I enjoyed the movie better actually because the quality was better. But yeah, there's been a lot of movies over the years that just the first time I either didn't get it or just couldn't really get into it. You know, another one was In the Mouth of Madness, John Carpenter film. First time, just thought it was boring, couldn't get into it, and I know I saw it in a theater, so I don't know how I wasn't paying attention enough to it to enjoy it, you know, and I'd finished it and then didn't care. And then it took probably 20 years for me to get around to watching it again. And then I really, really enjoyed it, you know, so enjoyed it a lot, bought it on Blu-ray to have another copy. I've probably watched it like twice within 1 year. Just really enjoyed what they laid out.
Yeah, I can't say that because the first time I watched In the Mouth of Madness, I absolutely loved it. So I didn't have the same like reaction that you did to that you did. I can't like talk, but I just really enjoyed like the mind bendiness, just like the way they handle just like what's real, what's not, what's our perception of reality. That completely blew my mind. But another movie that I was just like, what? Whenever I first got through it, like I didn't necessarily hate it, but it just left me going, huh, the first time I watched it. Prince of Darkness.
Oh yeah, that's yeah.
We've kind of been talking about like all the entries in the Apocalypse trilogy right here, but I first saw that and I was like, what the heck? This is silly. Just like, so the Prince of Darkness, the devil is just like in this green vial of oozy fluid. This is so silly. And
Yeah.
then when I watched it again, after I put that aside, I was just like, okay, this is still silly, but let me like approach it again and just see like what I think. Yes, the ooze was still silly, but it was actually a brilliant, intelligent movie about the nature of science and religion, and about just, again, the theme of isolation. Even in as big a city as Los Angeles, they were still isolated, just like in this church, trying to stop the end of the world, trying to stop the devil from coming through. And just, I loved it. It was just like, it's a movie you have to be in the mood for. Mm-hmm. So if you want to be in the mood to like, okay, I want to sit here and I want to analyze like something. Right. Prince of Darkness is definitely,
Yeah, that was one. I remember enjoying it, but thinking that a lot of it was really slow. And so I'd seen it like maybe twice, and then sometime over the last 10 years, I revisited it, really enjoyed it. And again, added it to the Blu-ray collection, enjoyed it even more with, the higher quality recording and everything. And always felt that it was a very underlooked John Carpenter film. And I don't really know why. I mean, it had some of his, familiar actors like Donald Pleasence and Dennis Dunn. And, they even throw in Alice Cooper as a homeless guy in that. But I don't really know. Oh, yeah, and Victor Wong, also from Big Trouble in Little China. But yeah, I don't know why I'd found it to be so slow. I think it was a similar thing where at the time when I first saw it, I just thought it was kind of slow. I was used to faster paced stuff. So then down the line, when I rewatched it, I was ready for it to be slower than it actually is, because I was kind of remembering it as being this long film. And instead, I just kind of sat down with it again, and it did, I did end up enjoying it much more. I thought it was a really creepy mystery, because one of the things I always mention in my videos, especially with horror, is the mystery side of it. I need a sense of mystery and a sense of being trapped and in danger, and I have to not want our leads to die. If I don't like them, like in the Friday the 13th remake, I didn't like any, I think Danielle Panabaker and Jared Padalecki, or whatever his name is, those are the only ones I cared about. So everybody else could die and I didn't care. So I didn't enjoy the movie that much. So this, Prince of Darkness had a lot of that. It had that, I mean, the whole thing is a mystery. We have this container, we're getting weird readings, get these college students and these, other people in to investigate it. It's like, all right. And we're in this church and people are starting to kind of encircle it, and the ants are going crazy and the homeless people are going crazy. And it's just pushing that in more and more and more. And it really had that creepy aspect. But yeah, I think that's probably all I have. I mean, I have like a whole list of other ones like Dark Shadows I didn't care for the first time. And then I went in expecting a comedy and I really enjoyed it. The Burbs got really dark and twisted toward the end, and I first time wasn't really into it, but then learned to love that one, and I'm glad that it's gotten more notice over the years. Anna and the Apocalypse is another one. First time, I guess I just wasn't in a mood for a British zombie Christmas musical, but went in with the right frame of mind. And I think the most recent one was the third Underworld movie, the prequel. First time I saw it, I just really didn't care for it. This time, I still don't think it's the best, or even, it's probably still my least favorite of the Underworld films. But if you want to see sword swinging, it's not really horror-like. Sword swinging werewolves and vampires, it can still be a lot of fun. So that's about all I have for my entries there on the second chance opinion changing,
Yeah, like the only one that I can think of, because I've got the poster for the original, just kind of back by my other window, The Rage Carrie 2. Now, it was marketed as a sequel to Carrie, and I think for that reason, when I watched it, that is why I just did not like it at all, like in the slightest. So when I first watched it, I thought it was garbage, and I put it away. Then I recently watched it when I got older, and I was like, you know what? As a sequel, it maybe doesn't hold up, but if I took it as a standalone, I found that I enjoyed it just a lot more.
Yeah, I remember thinking that about it. They should have just called it The Rage. And that's it. Don't call it Carrie 2. It'll be a remake called The Rage.
Yes.
And I remember thinking if I had that idea, then it was good. And there's been others like that. I tried to watch Fright Night 2 New Blood, which is the sequel remake. And I tried going in thinking it's just a vampire movie. Ignore the fact that even though it says part 2, Ed is still alive. They're in Romania. Peter Vincent is a ghost hunter instead. Just forget it. Just try to enjoy it. And I still couldn't quite get into it, But and I really wanted to because I like vampire stuff. It's just like when I watched Twilight, I was hoping. I wasn't going in as a hater, I was hoping, and I was like, I'm not really the target audience. It's not really my thing. But everybody else can have fun with those movies. But yeah, so there are the hits and there are the misses on those rewatches. But yeah, and like I said, Underworld was my most recent rewatch that I enjoyed a lot. And the other one, not horror related at all, was a 2012 film with Tony Todd called Sushi Girl. Tony Todd, Mark Hamill, a bunch of people. The guy who played Atreyu in Neverending Story. I mean, it was really good stuff. But first time, I just couldn't get into it. But, it feels like a 90s indie crime film in a way. So anytime I see something that I don't enjoy, I'm like, you know what? Maybe in 6 months, I'll try it again. Maybe I'll have a different opinion. But that's about all I have on those exchange of opinions. And I guess we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. Like I say, we'll put up some links at the end of the video here. We'll have some links up to Brandy's channel and some other content that I've created. So of course, if you like this, feel free to subscribe and hit that little bell icon wherever it pops up on my screen, and go over to Brandy's channel and subscribe to hers as well. We all put up stuff pretty much every week. So thanks for coming by, and we will see you in that next one.